Welcome back to the Fixed Ops Roundtable. It is a great honor to introduce our conference to the next guest. It is Jamie Farley, who is a podcast creator, producer, and editor of GetInHerLane.com. Jamie, welcome to the Fixed Ops Roundtable.
Thank you so much for having me.
Hey, as I said, great honor. We've heard a whole lot about you and the work that you're doing. A lot of great content, and congratulations on uh, on all the success that you're having in that arena.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
It's so common, right? People think, what a sudden success. It just happened overnight. But I know that's not the case, all right, with Jamie Farley, because you've been in the industry for quite a while and, you've got great roots. So take us back, if you don't mind. How did you become interested in automotive? And, what motivated you to pursue a leadership role in the automotive field?
Yeah, so I think my story is not too dissimilar from some other people who end up in automotive. At the time when I was in college, I didn't really know anything about the industry. I consider myself really lucky. I majored in business, and Toyota kind of found me because they recruited on campus. And I took a look at them and really thought their career path, what they had to offer as a company, and all of their opportunities really resonated with me. So I got on board 20 plus years ago and have been with Toyota ever since. And luckily, I've been able to spend most of my career in the field. So my role has really exposed me to the retail automotive side as well. And I've been fortunate to work with people at all levels of the dealership for a very long time, which has been really interesting, really rewarding, and it's allowed me to learn so much about the industry. And then I think looking into growing my career and growing the leadership positions in my career, I feel now that I've learned so much about the industry, my purpose really is to kind of spread the word about how many great opportunities there are. So not just on the OEM side, but on the dealership side, vendor side, this is just such a great industry to be in. And then also looking at some of the women coming up after me, just being a role model for them and continuing to pave the way.
Somebody mentioned earlier in the event that it's almost one of the best kept secrets, right? All the opportunities that exist in automotive. And you're right. You mentioned, out in the retail field. We have sales, we have service, we have finance, we have logistics. And I remember a lot of the folks at Toyota, back at the home office would always refer to the people like yourself who are out in the field and say, you know what, they're a lot closer to the action, right? They're aware of what's happening on the retail level. So, can't possibly say enough about that. So thank you for all that you do for the industry. I want to talk to you a little bit about some topics that have been coming up, and I know on your podcast as well. Diversity and inclusion in automotive. We didn't hear about that a number of years ago, and we've started to now the last few years. What motivated you, Jamie, to start your podcast on that topic?
Sure, a lot of it was my own experiences in the industry and starting out. Things were definitely a lot different than 24 years ago, but being the only female in the room, being the only female at the table, it's something that I know the company has made a priority and we've made a lot of progress on. So it's definitely different today. So I've seen that from kind of what I've experienced, and then also being out in the retail world and looking at the dealerships and them needing to balance their staff, match their demographic, and doing so can really help attract a different kind of employee, different generations, different gender, different diversity, and really that will lead to driving innovation and ultimately driving the culture. So I started talking about all of these things more recently, and it's funny because sometimes this is not a comfortable conversation, right? Sometimes it can, people don't want to maybe acknowledge that this is an opportunity or it needs some work. So I felt a podcast would be a really great platform to have the conversation, to continue the conversation, and really didn't have any boundaries in terms of automotive. It could really apply to any brands, any type of business or organization. So I thought it would be a great platform for that. And also, I'm not coming from a position where I have all the answers or solutions by any means, but everybody else collectively has so much to offer. And there are so many great things being done in the industry. This is a platform to share that. It's a platform to share these great ideas and best practices, to learn from one another and hopefully inspire one another. And then I think the last point on the why of starting the podcast is there's some great automotive podcasts out there, and I'm a big fan. And they're all talking about similar things: modernizing the customer experience, evolving the culture. But
Culture.
so, but so few of them are led by women. So to have a female voice out there, in the podcasting landscape to offer that perspective, I thought was really important.
You mentioned that word culture, another word we didn't hear a lot about years ago, right? And it seems to be that playing the long game, which is culture, is really foundational to success in automotive, especially on the retail side. Talk to us a little bit about that. Why it's really I mean, it wasn't a popular term a few years ago, but now
Mhm.
you hear more and more people talking about, you know what? All these little issues and all these things add up, and you can trace many of them back to the culture.
Yeah, and thankfully more and more people are talking about it. But it definitely starts within. It's in any organization, dealership or otherwise, with your employees. Who are you attracting? Who's working there? Who are you retaining? You have to have an environment that definitely focuses on the employee. And when the employee finds that it's a great place to work and you can retain them, it's going to translate into a wonderful customer experience. And a customer wants to walk into a store or a business where they see other people that look like them, that, represent them. And all of that diversity, really inspires diversity of thought that creates innovation. And I think that's just a really important piece. So evolving the culture, there's a lot of turnover in the retail world. It's kind of just how it is, but how do we reduce that? And there are ways that that it can be reduced, and we can, reduce the turnover and attract really, really good people to this industry.
Jamie, talk to us and share maybe some topics that you've covered in the podcast in the past, this last year, and that you plan to cover on the show, in the coming year.
Absolutely. So we just wrapped up season 1. We launched the final episode of 2022 in December. And we're really excited about that last episode because we chatted about the technician shortage and how few females in the industry are actually dealership technicians. And we did so by featuring a female general manager who has worked her way up throughout the organization and has really done a lot of great things with the culture in her dealership, where there's a good portion of her staff and management team that are female. And we also had on her female service technician, and she spoke and we got to hear her story. And that was really great too, because she's such a role model for the dealership and for what she does specifically in the industry. And, we hope that there are some good takeaways there to inspire others to consider this career.
And not easy for anybody, man or woman in retail, right? Um, and there are a lot of contributing factors to that historically. Okay,
Mm.
we've had long hours, right? We've had working on weekends, okay, and a lot of that has not been conducive to a life outside of the dealership, and it hasn't been easy for anybody. And especially I would imagine women as well. Okay, there's a there's a lot to consider, in that dealership model.
Absolutely, and those are all the things we're trying to tackle with the
Yeah.
podcast and the topics. We've also, had on some inspiration from other leaders in the industry about growing confidence and finding your voice, industry experts about how to do a better job with incorporating DE&I into your organization, how to form an employee resource group at your dealership, if or place of business, if that's something that you want to try to do and implement. And then at the beginning of the season, we looked at some of the root causes of, why women and diversity are maybe just a struggle, and they're kind of lacking in that environment. So that was really season one. We're planning on, season two next year, and excited about that. Some of the topics that I know we want to hit on are, doing an episode about male allies and how that's such a key piece in making progress in this area, because you can't just rely on, the women leaders to run with it. We need the male allies in order to win on this topic. I know we were working on getting an interview with a strong female general manager that has had to break down gender and race barriers in order to get to where she's at in the industry. We're looking at some great examples of onboarding and mentoring from other dealerships that are doing this. And then we might want to try to tackle the topic of microaggressions, which can be a little bit
Mhm.
sensitive, but
Mhm.
it's a reality, in some cases of what's going on out there, and what that looks like, and what to do and how to handle it.
All extremely important discussions, and I learned a little bit about that allyship topic at our recent event as well.
Mhm.
Everyone, we're talking to Jamie Farley. She is a podcast creator, producer, and editor. Her podcast is called GetInHerLane.com. She has her roots in the automotive industry, knows the industry, has worked with retailers for quite a long time. Congratulations to you, Jamie, on the success that you are having. I want to ask you, how do you hope that the podcast is going to contribute to some of the positive changes that we're talking about now in the industry, in particular for women and for diversity?
I really hope that we can just continue the conversation and make the topic more comfortable for everyone.
Mm,
And I hope that it does inspire some changes, even if they're small. There are just so many innovative things that are happening out there. And if we can just incorporate some of that diversity in our thinking and how we innovate, then it's going to enhance the employee experience. It's going to enhance the customer experience. And I think we can really make some good progress. So, and I think it's about being consistent, getting that consistent message out there. It's all about sharing best practices, and hopefully, if you don't know where to start, the podcast is a good avenue to just kind of listen in and get some ideas, and hopefully evolve the culture. It's not going to happen overnight, but if we just do it consistently, it can help.
yep. Last question, Jamie, for today. How do you see your podcast evolving? I know nobody can see the future. There's going to be a lot of twists and turns for all of us that nobody expects, in the coming months and years. And what are your long-term goals?
Yeah, thanks for asking. Actually, starting a podcast was quite the adventure in and of itself, something I had never done before, but I'm so glad I jumped in and learned it. It's been a lot of fun. I think for next year, we're going to be just really focused on getting great content for all of the episodes, so we have something really good to share out there and continue the idea sharing. So really just, finding industry experts, finding other dealerships that are doing innovative things, other companies, other organizations that are doing this well, so we can continue to inspire and make change, again, even if it's small. Ideally, I want to continue growing the listeners out there.
Yeah.
Again, no barriers to brand or specific business, just automotive in general. And ultimately, I feel like if we're able to make these changes, adapting some of our processes to attract more women in diversity, then we're doing what's best for everybody out there.
Love it. Jamie, if our audience wants to learn more, find the podcast, how do we do that?
I can be reached on LinkedIn, so feel free to DM me there. And I can also be reached through the podcast website at GetInHerLane.com.
All right, wonderful. Well, Jamie Farley, congratulations, and look forward to big things here in 2023 and beyond, from GetInHerLane.com. And Jimmy, thank you so much for, telling us a little bit about you and the why right behind behind this podcast today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Jamie Farley, everybody, the creator, producer, and editor of a podcast, GetInHerLane.com, here today at the Fixed Ops Roundtable.